Hey guys, Calamity here, and I wanted to talk about a tweet that a friend of mine sent me, and it's about the Spiral Abyss, and I'll have it show up on the screen right now. Um, and I'll read what it says. It says, "Unpopular opinion," in parentheses, not. Um, the Abyss is a joyless, time devouring DPS slash whale check that only serves to make those unable to clear it with full stars feel inferior. Now, before I dissect this tweet even further and make my counter argument, I don't know who this person is. I've never heard of them prior to this tweet. And so I don't know what their struggles are. Like, I don't know if they're unable to 36 star the Abyss because of their team comp, because of their play style, what characters they're using, etc., etc. But I will just try to give like a nice generalized counter argument against this. So let's start with the first part, which is the unpopular not opinion about the Spiral Abyss. I know a lot of players in Genshin Impact struggle with the Spiral, and I think that's okay if you do, because it's the only form of endgame content that Genshin has. It's supposed to be challenging, it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, then, it wouldn't be. What's the point of all like pushing our characters to the limit? It's supposed to be a test of like, okay, you have these really really strong characters that you spent months, if not longer, grinding, ascension materials, artifacts, talent materials, weapon materials, and they really want to put it to the test, to test your limits. So I think having an endgame like this is fine. It's not the perfect endgame system, and in fact, I wish there was more endgame stuff to do in Genshin Impact, but more on that later. I know a lot of people struggle with it, and it's okay. That's what this is the point. Okay, moving on to the next part of the tweet. The Abyss is a joyless, time devouring DPS whale check. That's a huge chunk to get into here. Let's start with the first part. The Abyss being joyless. Um, if you're not having fun with the Abyss, this is like a question that's gonna be answered differently for each player. Like, why aren't you having fun? Like, is it because you're not 36 starring it? Maybe you just don't like the combat. Maybe you're a player that likes to play in the teapot. Maybe you like to explore more. Maybe you like the puzzles and you don't care to do all these like try hardy damage rotation, dodging, all these like uh combat mechanics, and you just want to like do other stuff. That's okay. In my opinion, at least do the bare minimum for the Abyss, and by bare minimum, I mean at least floors 9 through 11, because again, this is a huge chunk of gems. The rewards for the Spiral Abyss, other than the gems, aren't that great. Like the gems is nice, but you only get like a small handful of Mora, and you get boxes that can have random 4-star and 5-star artifacts. And the 5 stars can only be Wanderer's Troop or Gladiator's Finale, which are okay, but they're not like the best sets ever. So if you're not having fun with the Spiral Abyss, just do what you can and call it a. Like even if you're only getting 3 floors done and you can't even touch floor 12, that's still 450 gems out of the 600, right? Because you get 150 per floor when you fully star them. If you don't fully clear it, oh well, move on, or try to figure out why you're not fully clearing it and work on that. Time devouring, yes. I will agree and disagree with this statement. So I agree. The um the spiral abyss can take a very very long time to complete if you're not a whale. You know, whales have a much easier time clearing this. So for me personally, I just cleared 36 stars this previous abyss that's out right now, and the floor 12 took me, just floor 12 alone took me 3 hours, honestly, to fully 36 star, because I was changing my team comps, trying different strategies. I had to reset a lot. It's not something you can just do one and done, at least not for me. I had to try several different options. So yeah, it can be very time devouring, but I will also disagree that, like, for endgame players out there, like, what else are you guys doing in Genshin? Genshin's a game that once you reach like the end game, so to speak, quote unquote, and you've explored most of the world and you've done all the puzzles, the quests, and you have nothing else to do until the new update hits, like what else are you gonna do? Because usually you get on, you do your dailies, spend your resin. If there's an event, do the one piece of the event. You know, maybe check up on your teapot, maybe farm some materials, but how long does that really take? 30 minutes? Maybe an hour at most to do all of that? If that? Like, there's not a lot of stuff to do, so Spiral Abyss taking up some time, I think, is okay. But I will also agree that, like, when I redo the Spiral Abyss to, like, want to try a new team comp or try a different strategy, it is annoying that I have to redo the previous chambers as well. So let's say, like, I want to do a team comp that I think will work well in Spiral, like, Floor 12, Chamber 3. But if I want to change my team comp, I have to redo Chamber 1 and Chamber 2 again. And I think that's really annoying. I kind of wish we could just choose a chamber. If we've 3-starred it, we could just skip to the one we want to do and, like, try out different teams and strategies there. It's really annoying and tedious to have to do previous chambers. So I will agree, yeah, it can suck a lot of time. And then DPS slash whale check. Yes, that's essentially what 36 starring the Spiral Abyss will come down to. But I will say it's only one part of the equation. It's one part of it. And yeah, whale check. So let's get into that. So obviously, if you're a whale and you've spent thousands of dollars on this game and you have refinement 5-star weapons, you've spent, you know, money on resin so you can get all these fancy artifacts. You have your triple crown talents. You have all these 5-star characters that, you know, some newer players don't have access to. Yeah, then yeah, you're gonna clear the Spiral Abyss. You know, we always see videos of people that have spent so much money clear the abyss in like 20 seconds, you know, maybe even shorter than that. We've seen people clear the abyss with just one character. So yeah, that can be like a little bit demoralizing, but does that mean it's impossible for the free-to-play player? No. I'm sure there are a lot of free-to-play players out there that will say like, hey, I've spent no money on this game and I've been able to 36-star the abyss. And, you know, there might not be many, but I know that you're out there. Even I was able to 36-star the abyss. But I have spent money on this game, but not as much as a whale. I'll be honest. I bought a couple Welkins, I bought a couple battle passes, and I only whaled for the Thundering Pulse, one Thundering Pulse. That's about as far as my whaling adventures go. But I haven't bought a battle pass in like the last 3 times now, and I haven't bought a Welkin since earlier this year, and I haven't spent money on the game in a while, and I've been able to 36-star the abyss. So whaling, yeah, will make it a lot easier, but it is definitely not necessary and definitely doable if you are free to play. So going back to what I said earlier about DPS check being one part of the equation, another part of the equation is your team comps. I mentioned this earlier. Are you using the right team comps? If you want to 36-star the abyss, you can't just use whoever you want. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Like when you're just exploring, feel free to use whoever you want, right? Because it's just exploring. The enemies are easier. There's no time restraints, whatever. But in the abyss, now a lot of people might not like this part, but you're gonna have to at least initially play towards the meta. Now, I'm not saying that you can't 36-star with characters like Amber, the Traveler, Jin Yan, Razor. I can't, like, underrated characters. Like, that doesn't mean like underrated characters are gonna never be able to clear the 36-star abyss. That's just not true. But you know, when I say are you using the right team comps, are you using a team that synergizes well together? Are you using a team that's well suited to each chamber's group of enemies, right? For example, floor 12, chamber 2, you have to fight the Magu Kenki in the first half. Really, really rough boss fight, and it has 2 phases. Now, obviously, if you're just bringing like AoE damage or something like that. Like if you're bringing AoE damage and you're lacking the single target, then yeah, you're gonna have a rough time. Like, are you actually building team comps that'll work not just well together, but well against the enemies that you're fighting against? Because, for example, in the second half of that same chamber, you have to fight a Mirror Maiden who has about 800k HP. And if you're bringing someone like a child who's Hydro damage, you're going to have a rough time because she has Hydro resistance, I believe. And then the Ice Mage that spawns before her has Cryo resistance. It makes sense, right? That's their element. So are you bringing the right team comps? Are you, and then another part is, are you playing the fights optimally? And what does that mean? I was talking to a friend recently um, about the mechanical array. In the previous Spiral Abyss, we had to fight this boss. And I was giving them tips on how to beat it faster, and they were telling me like, "Oh, I'm struggling. It took me like 5 minutes to beat this boss, dude." And I explained like, "Did you know like when the machine split, there's one of the machines has a special aura around them, and you only have to kill that one to immediately end the split phase?" And they didn't know. They were actually trying to kill all three of the machines. They didn't know you could just focus on the one. So that right there could have probably saved them a lot of time. Um, Another person that I talked to was wondering why their damage was so weak against the mechanical array. And I was like, did you know that the mechanical array and most machine type enemies in Genshin Impact have a high physical damage resistance? They have 70% physical damage resistance, I believe. Like, did you know that? If not, hey, there's your problem right there, you know? So yeah, all these things factor in on whether or not you're 36 starring the Abyss. So yeah, damage and being able to, dish it out is one part of the equation. Using a good team comp for the right chamber, as well as a team comp that synergizes well with itself, is another factor. And playing the fights optimally is another factor. As we mentioned with that boss fight, another example would be, are you using a shielder? Do you have to waste a lot of time healing yourself because you're taking damage, or you're getting stun locked to death because of all the attacks and stuff? Like, shields help with that. Like, try all these different stuff. You could be missing out on like easy 36 starring clears because you're not playing at your best when it comes to the bosses, when it comes to fighting groups of enemies, etc., etc. That's just something that I would have to make a separate video about for like how to clear the Spiral Abyss, but obviously that's no time for that in this video. It's already going long enough as is. And then we'll talk about this person's last part of the tweet and close out the rest of this video. The last part said, that only serves to make those unable to clear it with full stars feel inferior. Now this is more of a personal problem than a game problem here. Now this is more like an attitude and mentality thing you gotta change here. If you're feeling inferior because you can't clear the Spiral Abyss, well then look at what you could do realistically to clear the Spiral Abyss, and don't look at whales. That's just gonna make you jealous, right? Whaling is one way you could clear the Spiral Abyss if you wanted to, but it's not the only way. Like, as I mentioned before, look at your characters that you've built. Maybe there's some characters you haven't built that could be a really big help for you in the Spiral Abyss. Maybe there's a team comp you haven't tried. Maybe you need to learn how to do the fights better. Make sure, are you dodging a lot of the attacks? Are you grouping the enemies in the chambers together? Things like that. There's like so many different strategies and team comps and different things you could try, not to mention the buff cards, right? Some of those buff cards can really help you out. 20% attack, increased crit damage and crit rate, elemental skill, damage, elemental burst damage, things like that, depending on your team comp, can really, really help you out. With that being said, I will agree that the Spiral Abyss is definitely not perfect, okay? It's an endgame system, so it's meant to challenge you, but I'm not saying the Spiral Abyss is perfect and should be unchanged and completely how it is. I do think the Spiral Abyss is very flawed and needs a lot of quality of life changes from MiHoYo. I already mentioned being able to skip to certain chambers once you've 3-starred them. and not having to redo like several chambers just to try out a new team comp on like chamber 2 or 3. I think that's annoying. Um I actually wish there was even more floors. I'm pretty sure no one wants to hear that, but like kind of wish there was more floors to play on. To we get more rewards. And speaking of rewards, I wish the Spiral Abyss rewards were even better. Um they're pretty, other than the gems, they're pretty lackluster. And finally, I kind of wish there was different other forms of endgame content as well. I kind of wish there was like a co-op Spiral Abyss. That would be cool. Um, and I'm sure lots of other ideas that I can't think of at the moment because this video is going on too long. But that is my 2 cents on the Spiral Abyss. Remember, it is endgame content. I've said this a lot of times already, but it's supposed to challenge you. It's supposed to be hard. I get frustrated with the Spiral Abyss too. I'm not always 36 starring it first try, easy clears. If you don't want to do the Spiral Abyss because it takes too long, just try to do like maybe like a floor every other day. You have 2 whole weeks to complete it. It's not like you have to do it soon as the Spiral Abyss is out, unless you wait, last second to do your Spiral Abyss, then you have to do it all in one go. But anyways, I want to know your guys' thoughts on the Spiral Abyss. What do you guys think? Is it easy, hard? How do you feel about it? What did you guys think about the video and my rant? And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, which is going to be everybody because this channel has no subs. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, see ya.